afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Today is April the 14th, 2022. We'll move on to land acknowledgement. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands of the Acadia First Nations, part of Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq Nation. Item number 3, additions or deletions to the agenda. Does anyone have any additions or deletions? Councillor Sherry Hurlbert.
Thank you,
have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize for the late addition. At our Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting earlier this week, we were talking about the honorarium that Council had approved under our terms of reference for the citizen reps on the Accessibility Advisory Committee. But I would like to add to the agenda today the discussion around honorariums for other citizen reps on other committees, please.
Would that be under old or new? Since it's new.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd suggest that it actually is old business, because I remember when you were debating your policy around that, there was some discussion about at some point taking a peek at the application across all your committees for people who face barriers.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. So we'll add that under old business 9.2, or sorry, 8.2. I'll just put honorariums, and I'll put Councillor Hurlbert. Is there any more additions or deletions to the agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion to accept the agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor Durkee, seconded by Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham. Motion on the floor to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item number 5, if there's any declarations of conflict of interest, please notify me and you'll be noted in the meeting minutes. Item number 6, presentations. Today we have with us Rebecca Cassidy from the Doctor Recruitment Committee. So she's here to give us an update. Rebecca, your microphone is on and you have the floor.
Thank you very much. So first of all, thank you for coming back. I think this is my third time coming back and reporting on our project. That was initially set to be a 3-year project, and we know now that that's probably not going to stay the case. So let's see how this goes. Okay, so thank you for inviting me here. I am passionate about my job and passionate about doing this service for the community, so I really appreciate the opportunity to continue to share where we are. The partnership remains the same, with the initial 8 contributors are still on deck, which is fantastic. And usually what I do is I give you guys an idea of what we've been doing as an update, what struggles we're having, and where we need to go with it. So that's the outline of the project today. So big things that have happened in the last 12 months. We have Credit Union Place that's opened. Fantastic. I cannot even explain in 20 minutes how much easier my job is with Coastal Financial having made that opportunity available to us. Even just before I left the office, it makes a huge impact on my day. So that's fantastic. And I have some images at the end of the presentation just kind of around some of the projects that we've done this year. So that's massive. During the downtime, which is kind of December to February, we put a surge on continuing to build our video marketing assets. So we use that not only in terms of virtual conferences, but also when we're going to conferences in person. We populate our social media presence with that. We send it out to anybody who has any questions with regards to our community, our facility at Credit Union Place, our residency program, the hospital facility. We have quite an array of media assets available to us with that, and we push to make sure that we stay current with that, both in terms of our assets within the community and to keep it fresh and interesting. We are being invited more and more to the table on topics which will be influential in terms of rural physician recruiting. So not only with Dalhousie Medicine, but also in terms of the new department that involves immigration and population growth, the new Office of Health Promotions Recruitment, Health Professional, OHPR. So I think ever since we had the witness statement at the Standing Committee on Health, it raised our profile of this project in our community, and the fact that we want to be at the edge and we want to make things happen has really had an impact in terms of where we get invited to have a voice at. We continue with having, not at the moment, quarantine management plans for new physicians that are coming in, but we have that ready to go at any moment to flip that back on. And community onboarding is a continual project for us. The biggest thing that I would say on this slide, we did get together and a couple of us as navigators across the province. When I started, there were only 3 of us. Now there are 11, and so we got together and we created our own conference to share, to support, to problem solve, to identify struggles that we all share, because raising our profile and our success provincially is as important as raising us community, in terms of each community. So that a lot really came from that. We've been helping a number of other medical professionals. Basically, whoever comes to town that needs it, we do what we can. We have a very aggressive advertising and conference calendar lined up for the next 12 months now that things have opened up, and you'll see that that is listed. Where do we have that listed? Someplace on one of the slides we have those listed. But the really big thing that we're doing now is we're listening differently to the physicians that are coming here from other places. We're listening differently to the residents, and what they are looking for in terms of a community to set down roots in is very different than it used to be. We're getting a much more in-depth understanding of the new landscape that is transitioning into, and we're getting an idea of how we really need to, and I hate to use the word pivot. I don't even want to say pivot, because that means looking in a different direction from the same spot, but we need to change spots. We really need to do a lot there. So a lot of these conversations and listening transitions into pretty big stuff. So for example, you all remember the Hospital Foundation's radiothon this year. There was a big push for new cardiac equipment. That cardiac equipment was essential in us being able to sign on a new cardiologist to our area, new grad to our area. So this is what listening to those conversations and being at the right table and having people listen to what we're saying, and which is a reflection of what we're hearing from new physicians. So just a quick review of Credit Union Place. We are now at 3/4 capacity. Because we did open in November, where our new residency program participants begin in July. So we have had 102 student stays since then. So a stay is a night where a student has slept at the unit. So that's what a stay, that's how we define a stay. So 102 students, 100 locums, 45 residents, 13 medical students, 13 separate different locum physicians. The locum physicians being able to have that facility so close to the hospital is pivotal in terms of them being able to comfortably be on call, and to be able to have that resource at their hand is amazing. Again, a couple days ago, we had our residency match, so we have an availability for 7 residency spots. 5 of those are family medicine. When our residency program began in 2016, we only had a couple of spots, and that was 100% match because we only had a couple. But now we have an international medical grad seat as well, and we started this project September of 2019 when I came on board, and we have had a 100% full match at the first iteration each year that our partnership's been in place. So that has a lot to do with connections with the students and the locums and anybody expressing interest in our area. So that's huge, because that is our #1 main source of recruitment for family medicine. So what's our current status? You guys are not going to like this, because I don't. When we started the project and determined that the need was so huge, we had 873 people on the list, and as of the end of March, We are now at 4,748. Huge. 19.4% of the population in Yarmouth, Pubnico, and Barrington. So we're up 1,087 over last year. Now, I will say that I feel personally that percentage is not 100% accurate, because that percentage is based on the population stats Nova Scotia Health uses from 2016, which we are not at, where our population has grown. So I feel that with the accuracy of the numbers, this is the best I can do, but I think that percentage would actually be lower, but the number's not lower. The number is what it is. So why is that? Well, now that we are on deck, physicians feel like they have a little bit of availability, and so they feel like they can retire. So we have 4.5 FTE, or full-time equivalents, who are in process of retiring in the next 6 months to 18 months. That's going to be a problem, because some of these physicians have a patient load which will take maybe 3 physicians to fill. It's huge. So that reflects into the physician-work ratio being different than it used to be, because they like to have more variation in their practice, which prevents burnout, which is great in the long run. But we're going to we're feeling the pain at the moment. So population growth obviously contributing to these numbers. But in addition to that, since COVID, I mean, we know that COVID has had a huge impact on people's mental health, but their physical health as well. The social determinants of health have definitely had an impact. And so people who a few years ago may not have felt like they needed to have a family physician, now they're like, yeah, I kind of need one. I'm having these aches, I'm having this, I'm having that. So people, more and more people are registering on that 811 list. And also anybody coming from outside of the province or here from any kind of international or interprovincial migration, they're also registering. So I think those are a couple of the main reasons why that it's continuing to increase. So how are we doing in terms of recruitment? Well, since 2019, we've gained 14 family medicine docs. Just in the past 12 months, we've gained 11 specialists, which is huge, because if your family doctor doesn't have anybody to read their x-rays, that's a problem. Just in the past few weeks, I had a virtual meet and greet with medical students that are going to be starting to do their rotations next year, and we had a little pizza party and virtually, and the students got to meet with preceptors and residents and young docs from the area. So we were able to do breakout sessions of, one preceptor to 2 or 3 students. So they really had a great opportunity to connect. The feedback I got on that was fantastic. We've got 13 medical students coming in for 2 back-to-back weeks in May. And you may think that students are a little far out from our problem, but the reality is that they become the residents, and the residents are our #1 source of recruitment. So that's why we start that far back. We have 5 new family medicine residents starting in July. But like I said, 4.5 retirements and an unanticipated rate of community growth. In fact, the population growth to Nova Scotia that was recorded from January to April, the first quarter of 2021, hasn't been this high since 1973. And there's no way in 2019, when we started this project, that we could have anticipated that. So that's huge. So we're going to keep doing what we're doing. We're going to keep doing what works. But we also have new things to try, which are new medical clinic designs that physicians are looking at. So patient medical home is one. We have them all around us. It's another version of a collaborative clinic. Clare, Digby, and Shelburne all have collaborative clinics. So why don't we? That's the problem. This is a general sketch of the different components to creating that new medical structure that we could go over at any time, but I won't use the time during this presentation to go through it. It's pretty detailed, but it is available, as well as a 10-step strategic implementation plan. So it's all laid out. It's been going across the country. So making that adaptation wouldn't be huge. What else have we got here? Oh. I was really fancy here. I have all these. This is just, the boxes with the checks on it are actually things that we already have partially in place. Our next couple of years, we're going to keep going. We have continuing funding until the end of this December. We will be coming and asking our stakeholders to commit for another block of time, 3 to 5 years. We are also realizing that we need to create different valuable to physician ways of incentivizing positions here. We have to think outside the box. We have some ideas already, but it's important to us that we make sure that the incentives that we create are clearly limited and tied to practicing family medicine in our area. So it's not something that goes right on their bottom line of their income statement. It's something which encourages and maintains and is only valid as long as they're practicing in our area. So just a few pictures of some of our events. So it's Credit Union Place. Bless you. The area with the chairs is part of our shared living area in the student suite, which houses 3 students at any one time. We started up with our site visits, getting the residents and the physicians together, their new residency packages as they get to know what's going on. We've had new physicians come to the country with their families, which is fantastic. We needed the specialist, and we need to do this. Graduation was strange again this year because of COVID. We always give that little piece of local art for their waiting rooms and their physicians, so that's great. More on the graduation. What else have we got here? So various levels. So I just presented 2 weeks ago to the State of the Straight up in Richmond County. And so they're looking at the pros and cons and the how-tos of our Credit Union Place project. Again, I'm not worried about sharing this information because raising the profile of the province is important for us, right? We don't need to stand on each other's shoulders. Doctor's Day wine tasting, and the little green bags in the corner, I want to make a note on this. We give housewarming presents to people, new physicians that come to the area who've purchased a house. There are 6 bags there. This is for the last 7 months, and only 2 of those are physicians who have contracts here. The others are residents who are so happy partway through their residency program that they've already bought properties, and this is not an easy market to do that in. So if we're looking for, are we succeeding? I think that helps. I think that's definitely some evidence. Just events where we get new physicians, new residents with the community members experiencing our community and experiencing all the good things that we have to offer. This was from that, the medical student event that we had. So it was coordinated between Halifax and Yarmouth at the same time, and pizza from here and pizza from Alexandria's and Halifax, and a couple little glitches, but nothing big. And this is our conference and advertising schedule. This is the first 6 months of this year, 5 months. It's very aggressive. Let's see if I'm still standing at the end of June. And there we go.
Questions? Deputy Warden, you have the floor.
Thanks so much for coming in. I know it's a complex milieu you're working in, certainly, but to your credit, the credit union building is fantastic. I was up and toured it, the grand opening, and I can really see that making for a comfortable stay for residents and others that are passing through Yarmouth and potentially staying. So that's a really good news story that we're having some of the folks that come down as residents, and we're retaining them. And I guess there's not much more you can say when they buy a house. It's a good news story. So anyway, thanks so much, and looking forward to the progress we're going to make in the future.
Thank you.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to thank Council for supporting this program 3 years ago. I know we had quite the discussion, and it took a number of meetings for some individuals to get on board with it, but it's been a great success, and we certainly need to thank Chamber of Commerce and the Navigator, Rebecca, for changing the picture of recruitment and retention in Yarmouth County and region. Second, Rebecca, you made a comment about 11 navigators, and I just want to comment that we were one of the first people to start with the navigation program, and people are reaching out to us as models of how this works in the community, and I know the other levels of government have paid very close attention to what we have done in Yarmouth, and very pleased about that. The other thing I want to mention is that Rebecca commented about the retirements that are coming, and this is something we all really need to think about, is that a lot of these doctors, family doctors, have 5,000 patients, and new doctors do not want to do that anymore. They are not going to take on that load, and that's why it's becoming more and more challenging when someone retires to try and fill those positions. And we have to be aware of that, and that's, as Rebecca has mentioned, change our model to reflect that. New doctors in particular, first of all, they need help in getting set up and get started, and I think there's going to be a discussion about how some of the clinics in the area are functioning and compare those to some of the other clinics in the region that are more successful. And how do we fix that? And that's the incentive that's been mentioned, and I'm really excited about the conferences that you're going to be attending, and see what that turns out like. So thank you so much, Rebecca. You do an amazing job, and we're thrilled to have you on board. And I look forward to council continuing to support this program in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Lauren Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thank you, Rebecca, for that presentation. Question, because of the heavy load on the doctor practices, as Patty had mentioned, some up to 5,000, and so many people within this area that do not have doctors, are they finding that people who should go to a doctor aren't, until it gets to a case where it's an emergency call and they have to go outpatients? Is there any type of stats on that, or?
Well, I'm sure that that's, thank you for the question, by the way. I'm sure that that's happening probably more often than is actually documented.
Yeah.
The virtual care program that the government put forward using the Get Maple platform is a fantastic resource. But I have, through the Nova Scotia Health, the most recent report from the end of March shows that according to their numbers within the province, we have 63,000 Nova Scotians who have been offered the opportunity to sign up for virtual care. We only have 20,000 that actually have. So that's 40,000 people who are available to sign up to Get Maple to have, say, level 4 non-urgent but still prescriptive medical services or diagnostic services, and they're still not accessing them.
Yeah.
So when we have such a crunch in terms of our family medical service, when we have such a crunch in our outpatient department and our needs in terms of unassigned patients, and we still have such a huge number of people that aren't accessing it, I'm going to say appropriately, it bogs down our emergency departments a little bit more than maybe they should. And there are some ideas that have come about as a result of kind of looking at that number. We have some ideas that we're going to kind of run up the flagpole and see how we can encourage people. Mm-hmm. It may mean community education. It may mean making people who are hesitant or skeptical or just not comfortable with signing up for that kind of thing, just getting them familiar with the website and getting their health card number in and getting their kind of setting up their registration. I see that we could actually do that within our community, maybe through the library system or through, I feel like there's something that we're missing that we really could be doing, and it's really not that difficult. I mean, how difficult is it to set up an iPad with a kiosk and a summer student to help walk somebody through setting themselves up on Get Maple. So when I say that I'm looking at creative ideas to help spell off some of the pressure within the system, as well as look at new modes to practice and clinic organization and stuff, that's the kind of thing that I mean.
Do you feel that perhaps, I should say, in order to set up, is it a user-friendly application to do, or?
I think that what you're communicating to me is that you have not signed up yet.
No, I have a nurse practitioner right there. But I'm saying user-friendly is a big thing.
It's very user-friendly.
Very user-friendly.
And the Nova Scotia Health, I feel like they've learned to make things very accessible. I think that the immunization and the vaccine clinics have really they've stepped forward, and we had an aggressive immunization rollout compared to some of the other provinces. And I think that if they put their heads to it, they could probably get this done. But they might be busy, and it might be that kind of thing where the communities have to step forward and say, okay, if our community members need to be better served in this area, how do we facilitate that? I don't think it's necessarily downloading.
Is it possible, now I'm talking out loud here, that like when we put our newsletters and whatnot, that we could just put something in our newsletter saying that those who don't have a family doctor can go on the application of the doctor,
Absolutely.
You know? Could we do something like that, I'm wondering?
Absolutely, you want to hire a,
Something that we probably have to discuss later, but.
yeah.
You know, just to keep encouraging, because
Yeah.
obviously, if there's 20,000, I'm sure there's quite a few from this area.
I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are. And you know what? Maybe it's a matter of taking 6 months and putting the push on and getting a number of people that would normally take their level 3 and 4 needs to the emergency department, depending, getting them set up to go through that. It doesn't replace family medicine. It doesn't replace seeing a physician on a regular
No.
basis, face to face, but that's not where we are right now. We're in a bit of an urgent gap situation, and so,
Good, thank
yeah.
you.
Any more? I do have one comment in regards to the family physicians. With those family physicians that retire, do those patients automatically go to another physician, or do they go in the 811 system?
My understanding is that they go to the 811 system once the physician has put in their paperwork. So if you know that your physician is retiring in 3 or 4 months, you can't do that until that position has actually been accepted by Nova Scotia Health and posted, unfortunately. Sometimes physicians will refer out to another physician if it's someone who has a higher level of primary health need. So if they need to be maintained a little bit differently, a little bit more, managed a little bit more closely to prevent hospitalizations, then sometimes they can refer on, but people can only take on so much, which is why having a primary care unattached patient clinic available for the population is also very important at this time. So I really see that the Navigator Project is going to continue doing what we've doing, because we've learned all this, and we can do it pretty, not automatically, but a lot more easily now than we could before. But I see moving forward within our community as kind of being in 3 different traffic lanes, and they've all got to kind of go at the same time. So don't be surprised if people see me back here in a couple different sub-projects, just trying to get that moving.
Good.
Okay. Well, on behalf, I see no other microphones lit up. On behalf of the council, thank you very much, Rebecca, and we certainly appreciate all the work that you and the Doctor Recruitment Committee has been doing over the past 3 years.
Thank you. I
Thank you very
appreciate the
much.
opportunity. Thank you. And the support.
All right, moving on. Item 6.2, Trimac Engineering. Mr. Joel McNeil. So if I could, there's a little red button on your, on the microphone there. Just give that a push and I'll turn it on. Your microphone is live. You have the floor.
Okay, well, Thank you very much, everyone, for having us here to talk to you today about our solar project that we're developing. Nice to see you again, Victoria. My name is Joel McNeil, and I'm one of the principals of Trimec Engineering. And we are an engineering firm based here in Nova Scotia. I'm out of our Sydney office. I'm currently living in Glace Bay, where I'm originally from as well. And we also have an office in Halifax. And that's a bit about me. I'm going to let Richard introduce himself. He's the other part of this.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Blake, and I'm the principal of Abundant Solar. Abundant Solar is a solar development company that head office in Toronto. We do projects across Canada and the U.S. Doing investment into communities where the new energy is required. So we're here to share with you the part of in Nova Scotia. Hopefully, at the end of this presentation, you will realize that what kind of investment would like to bring to Nova Scotia, help Nova Scotia to move away from the fossil fuel, which is 80% of your power content at this moment. I think in 8 years that this province, at least 80% of power will be from renewables, solar and wind energy.
Richard's going to be doing most of the talking on these slides, so I'll let him know. I'll say it when I'm
How do we use this?
You're on, you don't have to go close to it or anything
Okay.
like that.
The clicker to advance the slides is right there.
Oh, wonderful. And let me see. Yeah. So as I stated that in the business of renewable energy, we always talk about the three things. So first of all, there are a lot of ESG, environmental, social, and governmental related investment in the world. They want to invest in the renewable energy side of things to make a profit. The profit usually is about market, about 6.5%. So we move those investment into areas that are in need. So I think personally I was involved in moving about $2 billion over the last 20 years in Canada into areas of needs. Nova Scotia is actually a very good market. If you look at the history of Nova Scotia Power, that mainly coal-fired plants from the north and supply power to this area. You all know global warming, climate change, carbon emission trading, and all of those things. And the province made an agreement with the federal government is that by 2030, that this province will be moving away from fossil fuel powers. And we did a calculation here is that this will equal to about 1.4 gigawatts of power that to supply power. So we have a couple of choices, and we can do it on the utility by Nova Scotia Power. We can do it as a shared solar shared program, or we can do it as a green choice program. So what we are here as a first step is participating in the rate-based procurement program, 350 megawatts. But our really goal is to the next round of a green choice program, which is that municipalities will get involved, that produce power, green power, and supply the local residents. And I will get into more about that. But today is really to share with you what are the 4 projects that we are doing currently, right? We have put in bid into the Nova Scotia government. Those are the 4 bid numbers, and we have a timeline. We so far that are ready to put in the final submission on May the 11th. And then they will do an evaluation. So by August, that we expect to be shortlisted, and by October, we will have a PPA, and we can start getting to construction immediately. And I know it's very small, but on the right-hand side, on the green background, those are the activities what we have been doing in Nova Scotia since May 2021. Okay. I want to show you those 4 projects so that you can see the magnitude and the locations of them. The first one is Horton Solar. This is in the Inverness County. We bought the land and we have secured the site. The transmission line goes through the property, so there is no right-of-way or easement or so on and so forth. So we basically building a power plant transformer stations on the property and ship the power directly overhead on the property. It is already permitted, so as soon as the PPA is issued in October, we should be able to construct. The one next to it is called Harbor Solar. This is in Guysborough. It's about 40 megawatts AC already. Same thing, we secured the site. Transmission line goes through the property, and it was a standard design. I share with you, we did a lot of those, hundreds of those, so that's maybe speak too fast, but I will, ask me questions after. Okay. The next one is in Halifax, the Pat-Peswick Solar, and this is smaller, 40 megawatts, secured the site. The transformer station is about 2 kilometers away. We'll be building a infrastructure for Nova Scotia Power to have the power shifted to the grid at the investor's cost. So you as the ratepayers will not have to provide additional funding to the utility. And it is part of the practice across Canada, in Alberta, in Manitoba, in Ontario, and in Nova Scotia, is that instead of raising electricity rate, which is already very high here at the 17.4, that to ask you to give more to beef up the infrastructure, they will look at the investors to say, you want to do project, you need to not only put up the solar farm, but also you need to build the wires. So that's what we will do, right? The one on the right actually is of most interest to you, and this is called Carlton Solar, not too far from here. It's one of the largest that we have permitted. We have secured the site, and we have designed it already. We have secured the financing, and we're really looking forward to do this one because I know today is not sunshine, but I will tell you, lots of people believe that Nova Scotia doesn't have a lot of solar radiation, but it does. It's better than Germany, the pioneer of solar. It's better than Japan. It currently is the leader in development. It's even not too much less than Ontario, which we have half of the market. Right? So this is a eye test. I probably wouldn't read it. We put together a very good team from a initial equity partner, which is investment fund that we have established over the last 3 years. We raise flow-through money on the open market every year, used to support development costs, like the activities we do now. Right? We have key personnel from the industry, whether they are in financing, in engineering, in construction, and in other developments. Right? So here is, I think, you probably see what we have done. Right? We did resource assessment. You can see that the little Nova Scotia map there. Down this part of the province, the radiation is very high. So I think if you feel that you probably missed out a little bit on the wind energy development because they are all north of here, solar will certainly in this part of the country. So that's why we want making sure we show up here to have a in-person meeting here, and we'll be putting a lot of effort with your support to develop renewable energy in this part. You probably saw the announcement between federal government and the provincial government. They want to do offshore wind, right? The offshore wind is great, but in terms of bringing in local economic activities, none of them are better than if those facilities investment are in the area where the people are actively participating. So that's what we want to do in terms of solar. Those are the projects you can see. We did big rooftops. We did solar farms. We have our own engineering firm. We are the licensed engineering firm. We issue construction drawings, and we are the general contractor. We hire local trades to do the construction. And actually, TriMike here will be the project managers, making sure that we utilize as much as local laborers as possible, because it is a labor-intensive construction business. For 100 megawatts, you think about over 800 acres, putting millions of solar panels. That takes a lot of labor to participate. Okay? So moving forward, you can see those are the 4 locations: Horton Solar in Inverness, Harbor in Guysborough, Halifax regions, Pat-Peswick, and the Carlton Solar in Yarmouth area. We strategically choose those 4 locations just to try to say which area has the best support, has the most available grid, and also from a sun radiation perspective, which one will give my scientists the best data so that we can have a higher production. Right? So that's where we choose this one. Based on this one, we'll be focusing on the preferred areas. You know, in this moment, my scientists tell me this area have the highest sun radiation, so that's where we are here to say that, you know, this is just the beginning, right? One of the things the province asked us is to work with municipalities and the Mi'kmaq community. In the first round, that municipalities and the Mi'kmaq was equally important to be partners in terms of ownership of 51%. Is in the last round, they removed municipalities as a partnership so that, you know, we have had discussions with Inverness, with Guysborough, they were the owners with us together. We put up the capital, so on and so forth. But this moment, on this 350 megawatts, it's only the Mi'kmaq are the ownership. So far that we have Wikibah signed up already, they own 51%. We will provide the equity and moving things forward. And they will have a long-term income because they are a partner, right? But I would say coming to the Green Choice program, then I would looking forward to partnership with municipalities because from my perspective, when our Mi'kmaq community talking about the legacy investment, about income, so on and so forth, we learned that municipalities traditionally depends on taxes, not investments. So I would say, you know, this is the 6.5% IRR before tax unlevered. I think that meet your investment expectations. So I'd love to do a couple hundred megawatts Green Choice program together in co-ownership with you. One of the things is that you're probably thinking, where am I going to get the equity? Because we will manage the long-term debt. We will manage the tax, you know, incentive investment. Even in the long-term sponsor equity, we have a funding and royalty agreement. Should our partners of 51% feel uncomfortable to take on the liabilities in terms of financing, we can loan the equity part to our First Nation or municipality partner. We have done about 100 projects in Ontario, my team, and a third of them are owned actually by Caps Casing, which is a municipality in Northern Ontario. They own 50.1% together with me owning the other 49.9%. We intend to use the similar model with municipalities in Nova Scotia moving forward. Okay. There's a lot of team built here. I think from a team-wise, I think you probably want to talk about the environmental side of things and also with the Nova Scotia team you put together.
Yep, sure. So as Richard mentioned, one of the tasks that I was given was to you know, make sure that these are Nova Scotia constructed projects. So I reached out to my professional network, and I've been practicing engineering. Well, I graduated in 2011, so just over 10 years now I've been practicing engineering here in Nova Scotia, and I've developed working relationships with a variety of companies across the province. So that was a pretty easy task. So hard to read there, but we have a civil engineering partner, Design Point in Halifax, a couple of contractors that we will be utilizing, Tri-X Construction for civil earthworks, Gilson Construction for mechanical and electrical, and sort of acting as general contractor. They will be reaching out to as much as possible local labor resources in order to fully complement the construction teams. Because as Richard said, the Carleton project, for instance, is it's actually up to 100 megawatts. That would be several hundred, like probably 400 people going pretty straight for 8 months or so to make that project happen. And of course, Trimac Engineering. So as Richard mentioned, we'll be acting project manager, currently co-developer with Abundant, looking after environmental aspects on the front end as we are in now, permitting, and overall engineering and construction of the projects once they are a go. That's probably good on that slide.
Okay. Yeah. So just in summary where we are, I think, in terms of price, the electricity this round is we're selling to Nova Scotia Power at the 5.8 cents a kilowatt hour. Imagine that what the value Nova Scotia Power harvests from external investors. They sell you at 17.4. They buy from us at 5.8. So we do it, because we realize here we have 1.4 gigawatts worth of opportunities, and you got to start from somewhere. So we have finished the 6.1. From project maturity perspective, resource assessment already done. That sun radiation here is equal or better than Ontario. The financing, we currently have a commitment from the Large Corporations Investment Fund. We also have conditional approval from Natural Resource Canada and also Canadian Infrastructure Bank because of the ownership structure that we set in place. Experience, as you know, that we built in US and Canada, we currently have another 6 construction sites in the states building solar farms. We are managing about 100 plus projects. So from a Canadian experience-wise, we're pretty comfortable to work in our own country here. There's no environmental concerns because solar is actually not required to do a lot of the environmental assessment because we work with the topo, we work with the environment. We don't flood the ground, and we work with the topography, and it's low profile. So one of the few considerations we do here is a setback if there's a wetland, visual screening if there's our view shed concerns, and also that there's no noise, and because it's just sitting there a piece of glass collecting sunshine. Right, so there's environmental that Joe's people have talked to the regulators already. We pass, right?
I can elaborate on that
Sure.
a little bit as it comes up. So as part of the environmental due diligence on these projects, as Richard just mentioned, the Nova Scotia Environmental Act specifically does not consider solar projects a Class 1 or Class 2 undertaking. Therefore, they're not required to submit the environmental assessment registration with the province. Having said that, it is just good practice to do your environmental due diligence. So I've been having a conversation with Nova Scotia Environment for the past number of months, specifically their enforcement compliance and inspection compliance and enforcement branch, and protected areas across all 3 management zones because we have a project in each zone. And so my communications and feedback thus far from the regional engineers and officers and the folks from protected areas is that there are, of course, they confirm there are no triggers for environmental assessment, and the protected areas folks confirmed what we had already learned through our own review of the Nova Scotia Land Viewer. We're not overlapping any protected areas or habitat buffer zones or any special interest areas from their point of view either. So that's, yeah, we did a lot of environmental due diligence, and we're feeling good about where we stand in that respect.
That's great, yeah. So this is the 100-point plan. That's what the government is going to evaluate us on, right? So I just want to give you a quick iBird view on this one. On the project side, as you know, that we secured the 4 big sites already. I want to take this opportunity to make a request, is that as soon as we submit the application in May the 11th, we will turn our focus on the Green Choice Program. The Green Choice Program will start immediately after this, and the target is 500 megawatts. It's basically allow the municipalities, federal governments, and all the large electricity users to achieve net zero by buying directly from the solar farms. Right. So that's where we'll say, if the municipality here have vacant land or closed landfill site or non-productive parcels of acres of those, we would like to lease from you and to put solar panels on it so that you could become part owner, you could be the subscriber to purchase the electricity at a discount versus your current electricity bill for the remaining 25 to 35 years. So if there's a list of sites, we'd like to know, and we'd like to start to study them as early as possible. So that's on the site control. Public engagement already started, and Mi'kmaq engagement already started, and also ownership, as explained, the Mi'kmaq will own 51%, our investors will own 49%. In terms of social program, we have agreement with Cape Breton University and Nova Scotia Community College to provide them with access, job opportunities, apprenticeship, and even scientific research opportunities using our equipment. Right? The economic benefit, I think Joe and Andrew, who is my chief operating officer, is putting a local expenditure table together. So when he says that we have a couple hundred people working here, one of the requirements is that they might bring in the top managers to manage the site, but I would like all the labor's related activities be done by people in this community.
Skilled trades.
Yes, skilled trades, yeah. And I think that's all I have here. And questions and answers. I hope I didn't take too much of your time.
I think you're right. Pretty good.
Thank you.
Councillor Lauren Cushing, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thanks for the presentation. And before I ask my questions, I'll apologize if you've already addressed those, because I'm a little hard of hearing. I do have hearing aids, but this other sound is disturbs some. So if you already addressed my concerns, I apologize.
That's
Okay. It's great that you're looking at the solar panels and whatnot. What are the maintenance requirement, number one, to look after a solar farm? And number two, what is the lifespan of a panel? They all have to wear out eventually.
Yeah. So the structure of the panel is, in the core, is a piece of silicon crystal at 99.99999. So it's basically the same silicon crystal that in our computers, right? So it will last forever. So it's
Silica crystal?
yeah, crystal, very pure silicon crystal.
There's a silica mine right across my house. Open that up.
The purity is
99%
not
pure.
there. The purity is not there. So what they do is that they put two pieces of glass, cover it, so to stand for the weather. And the earliest solar panel was installed in Belgium in the 70s. Very low efficiency, 7%, are still working, right? Currently, that we are using 22%, right? So the manufacturer will guarantee 25 years at 80% effectiveness. In our financial model, we calculate the 35 years of life, right? So what do we need to do? There's a couple of things. Number one, the monitoring. We have a monitoring center monitoring all the projects we have in North America. So there's electricians in the neighborhood and so on and so forth. They making sure, it's electronics, right? So they will have electrical maintenance. Here is very clean. So I see most probably you only need to wash the panels once a year, if that much, right? One of the things we want to share with you is that they maintain the ground. The clearance from the panel is about 1 meter from the ground. So we want to making sure the vegetation is no more than 1 meter tall. So in New York, what we do is that we rent the place to sheep farmers so that the sheep will go through them. We rent the place to bee farmers that we actually seed the local flowers, so the bees. I understand here that you might have a blueberries and so on and so forth of a low height. So one of the conversation we have with Nova Scotia Community College is to encourage agrovoltaics, is that we will open this one for local food security and so on and so forth. So if nothing happens, we need to hire a few people to mow the lawn in the summer.
Yeah.
Clean panels and a bit of preventative maintenance, tightening electrical terminations in the, the collector boxes where, you have so many panels strung together, they're all collected at a box. Those go further up the line, collected again. So those connections need to be tightened and retorqued periodically. And then other than that, it is detecting one-off problems here and there. And just to reiterate your question about the panel lifespan, in practice, so they're guaranteed 80% performance after 20 years. 25 years, but they, in practice, show upwards of 95. So that's why the financial models exceed the warranty lifetime, because they're still producing at a good economical rate past the 25 years.
So the connections, the collection points where you're talking about, that you have to tighten up the connections at times, that'd be similar to like a panel in your own house, that sometimes,
Exactly.
you know, for some reason, they loosen up and you have to tighten them
Yeah.
up. So that's the same idea.
Yeah. You will find.
Where are the panels made?
The most of panels are made nowadays in Southeast Asia, and because I think we have a certain regulations that not encouraging direct purchase from China, so most of them are made in Southeast Asia. We buy globally. We buy from Turkey. We buy from Cambodia, from Vietnam. We sometimes buy from Ontario for smaller specific requirements. But for this large project, we buy from the top 5 largest companies in the world: Canadian Solar, Trina, Jinko, all those listed companies.
What's the possibility in the future to have them built here in Canada?
Ontario, about 10 years ago, that when we started with the FIT tariff program, the Ontario government had a domestic content requirement, and they established a lot of companies. And all of those companies, except one in Sault Ste. Marie, that they bankrupted for a couple of reasons. It is very capital intensive, and it is a very low margin. That with the economic things, it's very difficult to manage. So what happens is that it's easy to have a production line. I can spend $300 million to build you a 500 megawatts site in 6 months. We have modular, very, very artificially intelligently controlled like boxes. However, to make money, you need to be in gigawatts. Right, so that's where the companies, when you're making, we're talking about 100 megawatts. To them, it's about a 3 days production, done. Right, so you have to have big, and we cannot, even North American, we could not support those low margin business because the labor rate is also not very high. Right?
So it's progressing all the time.
Yes.
More or less, they have it
Yes.
here,
Yeah.
That'll be it, John. Somebody else wants to ask questions too. I got a lot more.
Thank you, thank you. Next time I'm here, I will show you a video of all the projects we did, that you can see how we treat the environment and the sound barriers, visual screens. I know I only have 10 minutes today, so I didn't bring.
Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham, you have the floor.
Yeah, so you mentioned that the Carlton project was 45 megawatts. So I've got a few questions. So what does that translate into in terms of sort of household power? The second piece is what do you back the power with in the evening? Obviously solar doesn't work in the evening. And the green choice piece looks good for municipalities moving forward, 6.5% return on investment. So I think you mentioned that would start sort of within the year. You'd start looking at green choice, and we'd provide you with some data in terms of what we've got as a municipal unit to furnish you with, possible sites to do a project. So
Yeah.
Maybe I'll start there if you
Okay.
don't mind. Thanks.
So each household in Nova Scotia is about 10 kilowatts, right? So 100 megawatts divided by 10 kilowatts, you're talking about 100,000 household, right? So that's we can take them off the grid. So that's the environmental impact and also economic impact, because when you buy from the solar panels, you will certainly not paying 17.4. Right, so because if we can sell the utility at 5.8, I think we can sell you for 12. So, just kidding. So that's number one. Number two, I think on the Green Choice program, it is about sell directly to end users, such as municipalities, universities, and institutions. The government already secured about 200 megawatts of institutional subscribers, and I think, John, you probably also know other municipalities also have a plan to be net zero, so they will be the subscribers. And we will certainly, we do a lot of community solar in U.S., And all the places we do, the municipality is our first subscriber because they tell us how much they need, and then the remaining we will sell to the residents in the neighborhood.
And then further to your question about what about at night, that's where grid diversification becomes important, because just like the sun goes down, there are times in the province when the wind does not blow either, and you know, over the last 20 years, as wind has become more prevalent, they've learned that that weather pattern, when the wind stops in Nova Scotia, it tends to stop entirely. So that is certainly a challenge. Storage is not quite there yet in terms of large-scale utility storage to be economically viable yet. Again, it goes back to diversification of the grid. I think, you know, Nova Scotia Power is looking to Maritime Link in the years to come to really fill those gaps. You know, possibly also purchase from New Brunswick, which they do now when needed. And that's the quick answer for you. Until storage is more prevalent and economically viable, there will have to be other provisions in the broader context of the Nova Scotia grid.
If I can add, I'm here to share with you the project we're going to build. But in our pilot and laboratories, our panels can work in the evening after dark because of the thermal difference. Because in the day when the panels are heat up to 45 degrees, in the evening and the heat need to go out. When they create a difference of a thermal layer, it also create electricity. So that's the next round is in the works. You know, it's amazing that the scientists can do in the lab. So when I started, each panel only about 150 watts. Now the panel is 650 watts on the same footprint. So now they say they are reaching the physics limitations, and now they started to say, can we use the gradients of heat to produce? Of course, in Nova Scotia, I would say going forward, the economic development, it could become the renewable energy of the country. You know, you don't have to do storage. For example, there are sites that we do that the power will be used to break the water into hydrogen and oxygen. And the oxygen are supplied to the hospitals or other places. Then the hydrogen are supplied to either charging the vehicles or fuel cells. So those are the ways that you can do. I am on the board of a Europe high-tech company. We are manufacturing fuel cells, residential fuel cells. Is that a small fridge size, about 10 kilowatts, that you connect to a bottle of hydrogen, that will give you the evening, so on and so forth. Bosch will push the product starting 2024, so that actually you can truly 100% on renewables using different technologies.
All right, moving on, Councillor Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for addressing the protected areas and environmental areas that, you know, would be a concern, you know, for, I think, our, you know, our residents and our municipality. When you talk about environmental, that there were no issues, does that include wetlands as well? That was part of?
That includes wetlands as well.
Okay.
In fact, that was one of the focus in discussing the Carlton project. Bird Lake, Sloan's Lake.
Yes.
Is nearby. We're pulling the project boundary back. I think we're exceeding or doing better than the minimum required setback.
Okay.
That is a protected area actually on the landscape tour.
Right, okay. The other question I had, so if you are looking to increase business in Yarmouth County, Southwest Nova, does Nova Scotia Power have the infrastructure for you to actually send that energy back to them in our area? You know, if you're selling it to them, do they have enough capacity? Do they have the infrastructure that it's going to take?
So we just got the interconnection study back.
I can't explain. I just, you know, I'm an occupational physician, but I am managing all the engineers. So people see that I'm an engineer. I you know. So if you look at this map, the Carlton project, that's the major artery of the power from Nova Scotia Power to supply this area
Yep,
in the middle. The
Okay.
power is produced in Cape Breton, you know, in those coal power. By the time it gets here, it's already lost about 25%. So that's where the long distance traveling. So what we are doing now is that this power supply that will slow down or stop the power coming this way. So it's the same wire, but the power is no longer that electron, is no longer from the thermal plants up north, right? So that's the infrastructure we have. We got the report back. I believe we need to put about $10 million to give it to Nova Scotia Power for them to connect us. Fine, you know, because the Hussein is about 100 megawatts, about $150 million. So $10 million interconnection, we can handle it, right? The issue here is that, you know, what I want is that because we take power from this wire to our neighborhoods, right? If we could have a community solar or green choice program in a smaller scale, you know, on the wires near the streets, I think they are about 14.8 kilowatts. They can handle 10 megawatts, right? So those large wires will no longer depend on Nova Scotia Power's long-range transmission capacity, which is more reliable for them. So it's good for them, you know, reliability increase, not at their cost.
okay, perfect, thank you, and I look forward to continuing this discussion at council. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Smaller projects can go right on the telephone poles.
Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. It was amazing. And Councillor Hobart hit that question on the head, because we've been told in the past that those transmission lines were kind of an issue on green energy initiatives that we wanted to do here. So you guys are a bright light when it comes to that. Is Nova Scotia Power, they're always part of the partnership? Like you always have to sell to them, correct? Is that the way that works?
No.
No?
No.
Just for this program.
Yeah. The regulation, I was executive at Toronto Hydro for many years before I started the business myself, 2007. The regulation says as a public utility that we, the ratepayers, have the right to connect. They cannot deny us to connect, but they can charge us to connect, right? So what we do is really have my own engineers do a calculation, which most of them are the utility engineers who worked for me when I was at the Hydro. So we will do the same calculation, making sure that their calculation is reasonable with us, right? So we pay them, you know. For example, in the Green Choice program, they will be the administrator, right? So they will credit on your account, right? We can do it self. We have 2 call centers, one in Boston, one in Chicago, managing my US customers. We can do that. But here, Nova Scotia Power is fairly influential, and they made a deal with the government. They will be the one doing the settlement. So we pay them, right? So from that perspective, they become a service provider, and they become a beneficiary of our investment, but certainly they are not an equity partner, and they cannot deny connect us. Right?
Just a further note to that, the iron is hot right now, and what I mean by that is, I think it was just last week, Tory Rushton put forth legislation, amendments to the Electricity Act for Nova Scotia and the Public Utility Act, and there was a whole host of changes being proposed, but one of them was that this government wants to be more in control of how the Green Choice program is rolled out, as in less control of Nova Scotia Power, which I think is probably going to be a good thing. And we're having discussions with the Maritime Energy Association to try to, you know, voice industry opinion on how Green Choice should look. Richard and I have been talking a lot about that the last few days, actually. We have high hopes for Green Choice program and what it could mean for ratepayers. Myself being a ratepayer, I have 2 heat pumps. I pay a lot. I pay a lot for power. So anyway.
Thank you very much. I feel like Victoria's already started that list of potential sites, so we're really excited. to
If
look-
you have sites that we can making sure they produces revenue from a tax perspective, and if you are a partner, making sure that we will contribute to your operating budget, so you don't have to raise taxes. You know, when I was Toronto Hydro, I was able to, with the team, 6 of us, it's a $4 billion company, we took it to market, we issued a bond. Every year now, we give City of Toronto $45 million, every year. $45 million, right? Because that's how we manage things. So looking forward to a long list of sites that we would love to be your partner. You don't have to worry about sponsor equity, because there are a lot of people, huge infrastructure that manualize the world. My own pension fund, OMERS, Ontario Municipal Employee Pension Fund, which I'm a member, and we all investing in those ESG-related projects. So,
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
yeah, thank you.
Well, since no one else's microphone is up, I'm next. Little be announced to you that I only live less than a kilometer as a bird flies to where this proposed site is near Sloan's Lake and the Hamilton Road. So, just so you know.
We get a job for John after his retirement.
No, not allowed any kickbacks.
No. We need someone to maintain the ground, to cut the grass. Blueberries, yes.
Well, I do have my own little orchard and some stuff already growing around there. The only thing I'm going to be asking a question about is in regards to the public engagement. How is that going to work? I do know that you have an ad out currently in the Claire Shopper, I think it is. So I'm just curious on how that's going to work out, because obviously before it was announced, there was a little bit of buzz. There was talk of windmills and stuff like that. I said, well, I really don't know. I said, but I'm sure that there's going to be public engagement. So, since you had mentioned public engagement.
Yes, so as you mentioned, we ran advertisements explaining the project in the Claire Shopper. We're like 3 weeks, I think, into that, 3.5 weeks. And it also points to the website, which is up on trimachinge.ca/solar. And yeah, we're collecting feedback from the public. I'm personally responding to emails and answering as many questions as I can. Feedback on Carleton has been a little light. I will mention that, so maybe you could help get the word out a little more. Certainly after, so we submit proposals May 11th. We'll know July if we're shortlisted. We'll know if we're going to be pursuing a PPA by end of August. And I think the PPA will be all the details sorted out, executed by December. So once we get to that PPA stage, we'll be shifting into a different gear with the public notification and engaging with you as a neighbor and getting much more focused in the public engagement.
Okay, well, I will say this much. I think it's a great project for our area, in the Carleton area. It's a good use of land, very low environmental impact, as you had stated, because environmental issues have always been an issue around the Sloan's Lake area with the Blandings turtle, pink coreopsis, and things in adjoining landowners. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've already been to your site, and I've been referring people as they've been asking where to go and about any information. I said, well, I do know that you guys are going to be having a presentation to council, and then they're obviously going to be able to either watching now or they can see it later on. So thank you very much for that. And I see no other microphones, and I wish you well in your application process, and we'll see what happens next.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, staff, did you have any questions?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for giving us some time. We will have
Before you leave, my card should be right there at the administration window. Just leave them there on the desk, and we'll pick them up as we leave, so.
I'll leave the little stack here. Oh, we also, so So we hope to get a letter of municipal support if there's consensus on that. And you may have a format or a template that you use. We've taken the liberty of preparing one just in case, but I'll leave that up there with you folks as well.
Is there a timeline on that you'd like to have that?
Yeah, we'll be in the final proposal preparation end of April, early May, so end of April if that's possible.
Okay, so I was just looking for that, I was looking for the timeline on that because we don't usually make decisions in committee hall. They're done in regular council, which would mean 2 weeks' time. And okay.
That can work. That's fine.
Well, thank you very much once again. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, just getting my computers back up and alive here. And it says error. Go like that. All right, moving on to item 7.1 for action correspondence. We have here 7.1.1 volunteer awards request from MP Chris D'Entremont. I'll pull that up. We'll wait for the CAO to, Deputy Warden?
Yeah, I mean, MP D'Entremont is clearly his office, Krista O'Connell, is asking us to participate in Volunteer Week. And so in the event, you know, they just want to essentially participate in the process by being able to you know, hand folks the certificates of appreciation federally. So perhaps we could just have staff contact Mr. D'Entremont's office and coordinate the receipt of certificates and that type of thing for our volunteers.
Usually what happens is the municipality, District of Yarmouth, along with Yarmouth Recreation, they hold an event in regards to volunteer awards, and I'm not sure if they're the ones that forward it through or if it would be staff. So, Madam CEO?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I was just saying goodbye to our guests. There's a difference between the federal volunteer recognition program and the provincial, and what you're used to hearing about through our local networks is the provincial program that happens later in the year. So I think what the MP was trying to do was just to make sure that if there were any local activities taking place, that we worked with his office to coordinate them. So I'm not sure what part of the conversation I missed, but I'm hoping that provides a little clarity.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Deputy
that's
Warden.
essentially what I was saying, that staff would get in touch with Minister or
The
MP
MP.
D'Entremont's office and coordinate any positive activity around the promotion of their certificates.
All right. No more on that one. Item 7.1.2, here's a new one. Non-residential provincial deed transfer tax for the non-resident property tax. And you have in there 3 pieces of correspondence and 1 piece of correspondence, the last one, 7.1.2.3. That was only added maybe an hour before we had our committee, the whole meeting here as we sit. So we only get that letter, I think it was 108, in regards to, from the letter from the PVSC. So you all have that in your package. What is the wishes of the council? Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham, you have the floor.
Right, I mean, we've got the 3, we have the 3 pieces of correspondence. It's a provincial matter. I mean, I've got my own thoughts on it, but we haven't really had the opportunity to reach out to folks. We were just on a call before the meeting, and some councilors were saying some folks are in favor of the legislation, and some people are not in favor of the legislation, and so I'm just wondering, rather than going too quickly and taking a position, I'm wondering if there's some way that we can garner some feedback as a council before we answer any of these letters. That may be wise, and perhaps staff could do that. I'm not certain if we want to go there, or if we want to hear more from the NSFM. Perhaps that's the best spot to have the position taken from. Just thinking out loud.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would personally go on record to say that I oppose this legislation for a whole variety of reasons. And I have to quote my sister, who said this is very unwelcoming legislation for people who want to come here from away. I also just want to make a comment that that there are those people who want to live in Nova Scotia, but because of our healthcare system, they're not able to. So what they do is they come here for 7 months, but they maintain a residence elsewhere so that they can use the healthcare system in other locations. I think about those people who for many years, 50, 60 years, have been coming to Nova Scotia during the summer from other areas, and they have a cottage somewhere in the area, and at this point in their lives they are now seniors on fixed incomes, and it would be really unfortunate if we were at a point that those people who contribute to our community, who contribute to our property taxes, who hire local people to maintain their properties, and they do contribute a lot by hiring local people to work on their buildings, etc. I just think this puts a lot of pressure on those people, individuals, particularly who are on fixed incomes, and we've heard nothing about any exceptions to the rule, just a general statement by the provincial government. Also, I know things have changed in Yarmouth County, and we've seen pieces of property that have been sitting on the market have been selling, and a lot of the properties that have been selling in the area are selling to permanent people, not necessarily summer people. And some of those people who come from away end up moving to Nova Scotia, and it's like some of the letters that we've seen, they do contribute greatly when they are here. In terms of helping our housing set our goals, it's a pocket of money that, yes, might help build properties, but if all those pieces of property that start going up for sale, then a lot of those people, a lot of those properties would not be aimed at those people having difficulty affording a home in the area. So just my thoughts, my personal thoughts, that I feel that this is going ahead without consulting. Oh, and I just want to also add that I've talked to some real estate folks too who definitely don't agree with how this is being rolled out, and that they have not been consulted. Thank you.
Councillor Sherry Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I somewhat agree with Deputy Warden, trying to figure out how we approach this as a municipality, what kind of correspondence we do send out. And for the listening public, for our residents, part of the correspondence that we received was from Municipal Advisor, Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and the number 1 bullet says, both of these tax measures are to be administered by the province, so they are not us. As far as we know, they are not going to be administered by us, so that's one thing I just wanted to, make sure people knew. And the call that Deputy Warden was talking about earlier, we were with the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, and they pointed out that the province hasn't clearly defined what a non-resident is, and there was something else, but I didn't make note of it, but just so that our residents know that it isn't being administered by the municipality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'm going to weigh in on this. Number 1, I'm sorry, if that's the case, I missed you, so My apologies for butting in. Councillor Cushing, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I too agree with Councillor Cunningham and Councillor Durkee and what Councillor Hurlbert had to say. This information we've had in our packet for a little while, but the letter from the PVSC just came shortly before we have our meeting. This is a big deal that we really have to discuss. I really can't support something that's going to, keep people away from buying property here in Nova Scotia and moving here, right? I just, the taxes that they will pay in the first place, the money that they'll drop in the local economy is just, it's unbelievable that something like this will come to light. We shouldn't be trying to push people away. We should encourage people to come. Thank you.
My apologies for that, Councillor Cushing. I don't mean to use my position as a bully pulpit, so. I must have missed you in there, not looking before I speak. All right, this here is, I can't remember who mentioned it, but I think it was Councillor Hurlbert. This is provincial legislation. This is not legislation that's handed down by the municipality of the District of Yarmouth or any municipality across the province of Nova Scotia. We were not consulted. The PVSC was not consulted. This proposed, what do they call it? Proposed bill, it's Bill 149. It was on April the 8th when the provincial government released it on the floor. It has not been passed yet, but there are so many questions, as we all know. Number one, where did the province get their information from? Something that a lot of people probably don't know, that's probably watching here, is the municipalities across Nova Scotia pay for the PVSC. What type of downloading costs are going to be put on the municipalities in regards to that? Because the PVSC would have all that information on where residents live and all that other stuff. I really don't know how we should respond, but I do know that the NSFM has responded. There's been certainly several groups that's responded to the Premier, and we've only seen, we only have 3 pieces of information here. One was from the municipality district of Guysborough. The PVSC has responded, and I'm sure there's many others. Right now, I really don't know how this could affect, and I don't know if we should ourselves put forward a letter in that regards. One of the big issues is nobody seems to have been asked on how this will work or knows where it's coming from. So I'm going to let the CEO speak to this. Madam CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what I'm hearing from municipal government across Nova Scotia is that there are far more questions than there are answers. And I'm given to understand that there's a policy analysis process that is frequently undertaken with a new initiative like this. And there's not a lot of certainty about the due diligence that was exercised in that process. So the warden mentioned property valuation services. So that's the corporation that determines the assessed value of all the land in Nova Scotia, and they deliver the information to each municipality, and we use that information to generate our roll and to levy our taxes. Municipalities in Nova Scotia pay for that. It has its own board, it's its own corporation, it has its own policies and bylaws, but municipalities share in the cost of that. In Bill 149, before the legislature in Nova Scotia right now, will compel PVSC to give the province that information that municipalities have paid for. I would like to think this council has a position on that in terms of fairness and equity. Bill 149 does, however, give the province and PVSC the power to negotiate a service exchange agreement, which means the province can pay for information. They can negotiate that with PVSC. There are questions in my mind around liens and tax sale. So under the Municipal Government Act, when a property is in tax arrears, if something goes south. There's a bankruptcy, there's an estate issue, there's a matrimonial issue. If there are unpaid taxes and there's a settlement, the municipality is the first creditor that gets paid. In this situation, I've only had a couple of quick reads of Bill 149, and we would have to probably consult our lawyer. They're not proposing to use a tax sale process. They're proposing to use judgments in court against property owners who are in arrears. I still don't know what that means for us for first lien, and what the probability is that we would collect tax arrears if there's a situation. I have questions around what's the likelihood that this additional tax could cause one of our ratepayers now to just throw up their hands and not pay any taxes, never mind just the provincial. So, like everybody else, I'm unsure exactly what the exemptions are. There are some exemptions, but I'm not 100% confident I understand the application of them. In the District of Yarmouth, there are 539 assessment account numbers that go to addresses outside of Nova Scotia. A total assessed value of $43,865,349. So that is $877,000 in tax that the province will levy to ratepayers we would have in common, assuming none of them qualified for an exemption, and I wouldn't have that number for you. So in the letter that Chester wrote to the Premier, they discuss kind of the rationale behind the taxation programs as part of the response to the housing issue, an attempt to cool the market and speak to attainable housing for Nova Scotians, in particular for young people who can't afford the larger mortgages. They're looking for entrance-level mortgages. That's what was in the press release after the budget. And in Chester's note, they share some concerns that the estimated $80 million plus or minus from the two programs combined is going to go into general revenue. And there's a question about, whether or not there should be a conversation that monies collected from assessment accounts in each municipality, should there be some sort of a direct correlation between the monies collected and housing programs in those municipalities. There are people who do not think there are housing issues in rural Nova Scotia. They feel like the housing problems are in urban centers only, and we know that, the people in this room, we know that's not true. And we know that a consultant has recently been engaged to undertake a gap analysis of housing needs across the province of Nova Scotia, but by municipality and by housing type. So taking into account certain types of densities. It seems like that information could inform some kind of programming on the part of the province to help direct at least some of the revenue from these new tax streams to housing issues in our community. So again, it's questions, not answers, and it's, can we have a conversation? Is there room to talk about this? So I would agree generally with council. Taking a position, I'm not sure the timing is right for that, but I would recommend council craft a letter outlining your questions and your concerns around some of the issues that I've very briefly highlighted here just now for you.
I'll open the floor. Deputy Warden.
So I'll move that council direct our CAO to work with other staff and provide us with a draft letter that we could send to the province with clarifying questions about this issue. And I would think that I would like to think that we could have that at the next council meeting. Is that? Yeah. So I'll make that a motion.
Motion on the floor, second. Motion on the floor, second by Councillor Lorne Cushing. Is there any discussion on that motion? Councillor Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I completely agree. I think there are too many unknowns here. I think that it'll help for us. Listen, let's face it, extra money coming into the provincial government where they could turn, if they were going to turn around and use it for housing, would be a benefit. But you know, there's a whole group of people who have been coming here for years who are going to be impacted by that. And, you know, for some, if they have lots of money, like Chester is one of those areas where there's a huge population of people who come from away, and they're very expensive homes. And so those types of homes, if all of a sudden everybody started selling them, Chester would be in trouble with their own, you know, property taxes if they had a glut of all these expensive homes on the market. They aren't the ones that young people are going to buy. So it's quite an interesting situation, and I don't know, I don't see that they've done an impact assessment to figure out how that's going to affect everyone. So I appreciate that, the thought of writing a letter with our questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Durkee. I think that was very interesting, the figures that the CEO mentioned. Don't quote me on this, I didn't write them down. I think it was 500-plus homes and a assessment roll of 877,000.
So it might not necessarily be a home. So the 539 assessment accounts are accounts that are coded as residential. I don't have granular enough data to tell you what class of housing, if any, might be on that. It could be land that's classified as residential. It might not have a dwelling on it, but just very, you know, taking a quick look at it to see, you know, what our role looked like in relation to the program.
I think that's some very important information that I think the province should know on how it would affect. Whether in like you said, you wasn't sure on the exemptions and stuff, but as it stood right now. So information like that is certainly interesting. So if there's no more discussion on this, I'd entertain a question on the motion on the floor. Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 7.2, for information, you have 2 letters of correspondence from the Spring Gala from the Yarmouth Hospital Foundation is canceled, and the changes to the Emergency Services Provider Fund requirements. Moving on, item number 8, old business. The CEO has a briefing note in there in regards to counselor group benefits.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Director of Corporate Services did the research and formulated the briefing note for you. So she's here with us today and is likely better equipped to answer your questions than I am.
Councillor Lauren Cushing, you have the floor.
I didn't want to, thank you, Mr. Warden. I didn't want to be the first one to speak, but, you know, I see what it says there, and I don't agree with it, but it won't affect me either way, because I see the coverage terminates when a person gets 70 years old, and I'll be that in May, so it won't affect me anyway. Thank you.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and since I was the one who initiated this business, I have a couple of questions to ask. So through you to our Director of Corporate Services, Darlene, the costs that you quoted, is that the direct cost to staff or counselors, wardens, et cetera, or is that a percentage? Is there anything that shows? And second to that is, what percentage of these costs have been provided to staff?
Councillor Hilton, can you turn off your mic just for a second? Now, can you hit it again? No, go ahead, turn yours on. There you go, you have the floor.
Okay. Sure, the amounts there are the total amounts. So regardless of what the percentages would be between Modi and the individual, so that's the total amount. And in terms of staff here, it's 80-20%.
Oh.
And in research across the province, it varies. There's a wide range of percentages there, ratios.
Thank you.
Deputy Warden?
Yeah, and I mean, any benefits the beneficiary, so to speak. So, but at the end of the day, we're given a stipend. It's reasonably generous, I think, for counselor duties and so forth, and therefore, I mean, I don't think I'd be in favor of an additional, potentially up to an additional $38,000 of exposure, and some of the councillors around the table may not, you know, there may not be any benefit in participating in this program at all. They may have their own insurance, they may have aged out, et cetera. But again, that would tie the municipality moving forward to a potential $37,000, $38,000 cost each and every year. So for those reasons, I mean, this wouldn't be a priority for me. I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily, but I just don't think it's a priority, and therefore I couldn't support it. So I'm going to move that you know, we decline. We do option B. We decline to offer group benefits to councillors, and that would be a recommendation to our regular scheduled council meeting.
So motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Second time. Do I have a seconder? Third and final time. Do I have a seconder? Motion dies. So what is the wishes of council in regards to this piece of information? Do you wish to act, table? Councillor Sherry Hurlbert.
I think Councillor Hilton had, oh, it's okay. So, motion has died. Do we have the option, because it has died and we've declined, can in the future we go back to this and have, I guess I'm just not sure how we would proceed now that it, I guess as far as Robert's Rules of Orders go, what are our next, like what are our limitations?
So I think your option with the most flexibility is to make a motion to reconsider at a future meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Hilton.
So, I have lots of questions now. So it was never seconded, so does that still make it a motion? Like, to me, nothing's happened.
So when a motion dies on the floor due to a lack of seconder.
You want to look that up, and maybe I'll just talk for a
Okay,
second?
yeah.
So I'll just say a couple things. I don't even know if I can now. The motion's made and it's died. But you know, I was in favor of it when it first started. I've talked to, you know, a neighboring municipality that those councillors are offered benefits, like Councillor or Deputy Warden Cunningham said. Usually, if you have them in another job, you don't get the opportunity to have them in both. Myself having them at the hospital, you know, it's easier for me to vote this down because it's a cost to the residents. But I strongly believe if a job affects your health, that job has the responsibility to take care of you as well. So I think the percentage question is something that we could talk about at a further debate. But it wouldn't be $38,000. It probably $35,000 or whatever that adds up to. But I do think that it is a conversation that should be had. I think it said 25% of municipalities offer those benefits. Yeah, so I think it's progressive. I think if I could offer benefits to anyone and everyone, it would be something that I would vote for. So I shouldn't be voting no to this just because it's a limited group. And it's a group of, you know, my peers. So something that someone had mentioned to me was maybe if we're uncomfortable debating this at as a council, because it affects us individually, to strike an ad hoc committee to see what, and that's fine if it's a no, to see, if the community was comfortable with that as well. Or I'm not sure where to go with that, but I'm not a no. So I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you. It's very easy for those people who do have benefits to look at it and say, no, we don't need to do that. But then there are those people who don't have benefits, and if they could, it certainly would be helpful, particularly as Councillor Hilton said, that, this is not an easy position, even though we do get a stipend. It's not a large stipend. If you have another job and you're making other money, then that's great, but there are those of us who don't do that. So if we have the opportunity to bring this back to another meeting, I'd relish the fact that we could talk about it some more. Also, like, we're setting the table for future councillors as well. It's not just the group of people who are sitting around the table that this would have an impact. And again, because there are so many, although I'm in an uncomfortable position, quite frankly, because Lauren has mentioned that he wouldn't qualify, and 3 other people have jobs that provide benefits. I might be the only one that doesn't have benefits, and so it is a little bit uncomfortable for me, but I'm looking at the big picture and not just those people who are sitting around the table at the moment.
So the motion never made the floor, but as per... Go
Right,
ahead,
so
Jen.
because the motion never made the floor, the rules around having it be materially different, if you reconsider it, do not apply because it never made the floor. So even though it wasn't seconded, it can be brought back at any later time, but later is not defined. So I don't know if that means 2 minutes later or another meeting.
So does someone want... Councillor Nick Hilton.
Question through the chair to the CAO. So we don't know, we still don't know all the ins and outs of this, like what it would look like for each council. You said it's 80-20 for staff. What if, it was 50-50 for councillors, or do you make it 80-20? Like, who decides on that? Is that us?
It'd be us.
And that has to be in the motion? Maybe we could bring it back to another meeting. We can have some further thought behind that. But I am in favor of it. I really am. And I'd make that motion. And if it got voted down, I'd be comfortable with that. Councillors are a part of the municipality. To have 2 separate groups of staff with different options are a bit different. I know we are different, but I am in favor of it.
Deputy Warden?
So, I think the way forward is pretty clear. The briefing note states that the options available to council is A, opt to offer group health benefits to councillors and determine cost-sharing ratio. So the mover would presumably say what the cost-sharing ratio is. We got Darlene's been here, so this is 80-20 for staff, which is just a piece of information that could be anything. It could be 10-90, or it could be 90-10, or it could be 100%, or 80-20. That would be the responsibility of the mover. Decline to offer the group benefit to councillors, so that was my motion. It died on the floor. And again, I'm not in favor of extending this because there's a pretty sizable cost per year for it, and only 25% of municipalities do this. And then refer back to staff for more research. So I mean, really, at this juncture, if folks want to, I'd move that we advance it as is to the regularly scheduled council meeting, and if somebody wants to make a motion at that time, they can. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I look at this and it says maximum financial exposure, does maximum financial exposure mean the 80-20? Or would that be Like, what, can you clarify what?
That's 100, if the counselor were to pay the premiums 100%.
If the counselor were to,
If
sorry, if the
Modi was.
municipality
Sorry,
were to
yes.
pay for every single, all 7 of us,
Yeah.
100%, it would be $37,842.36.
Yes.
Okay, so I would make the motion to, this is where I struggle with the wording or the intent. So C, refer back to staff, and I think it's not necessarily for more research, but more information for us. So the 80-20, 50-50, 60-40, what, because that would be 100% the municipality. So what would that financial exposure look like if it were those other ratios? Does that make sense? And is that a motion
So you're looking to make a motion to refer it back to staff to come back with different funding formulas?
Yes.
In regards to counselor/municipality funding? Is that what
Yes.
you're looking for?
Yes, please.
So let's get this motion straight that you're going to be putting on the floor.
I
You'd
move,
like to make a motion, I'll let you speak first.
okay, I move that, and I'm not sure, do we have to recommend this to regular council, or can we just say that we move that staff come back with a report on the breakdown of each funding formula?
Actually,
Yep.
all right. I can't just turn your mic on. Deputy Warden?
I respect Councillor Herbert's questions, but I did make a motion to advance this to the next council meeting for a decision.
But the motion was never seconded.
No, this is another motion. This is another motion. You didn't recognize my motion when I...
But see, the thing of it is, Deputy Wardens, you were talking all around. You didn't specifically say, I make a motion that.
Yes, I did.
So you have to call for a seconder, so
Yeah, you just missed it.
we can entertain shares.
Can I have a call? I'm going to call for a 5-minute recess, just to get this straightened out, because I made a mistake, so I'm making a 5-minute recess. Good afternoon, everyone. My apologies for that. I had missed a motion that was put forward by the Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham. I should have asked for a seconder. The reason why we went into recess was to clarify the Robert's Rules of Order, to make sure that everyone fairly gets to put their motions on the floor. Since I missed that, Deputy Warden, you have the floor to make the motion that you originally made.
Yeah, so I'll move the Municipal District of Yarmouth, move forward to the regularly scheduled council meeting. The options is presented in the briefing note for a vote.
A motion on the floor. A motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee. Is there any discussion on that motion? Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Just to clarify, this is where I now move to amend the motion. Okay. I move to amend the motion to include staff breakdown of the cost-sharing implications.
Okay, there's an amendment to the main motion. Do I have a seconder to the amendment? Seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee. So now we're going to be speaking about an amendment. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Question being called on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? A vote of 5-1. Motion is carried. The amendment. So now we're back to the main motion that's on the floor made by the Deputy Warden. Is there any discussion on that motion? Question being called on the motion, on the main motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Could I get a raise of hands to anyone that was opposed on that main motion? So that motion was carried unanimously. Madam CEO?
Just to clarify, because you're being so specific with your language, Mr. Chair, so the last vote is on the amended motion, and I have it recorded as everybody in favor.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Any more discussion on that? Item 8.2, this was asked to be put on here by Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, and it's in regards to, I can't even read my own writing, honorariums in regards to committee appointments. Councillor Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, not sure how we proceed with this, but I know that our Accessibility Advisory Committee, we had changed our terms of reference to include honorariums for those citizen representatives who face barriers to attend a meeting. And I know when we had that discussion and we passed the motion here at council, we had other council members who were receptive to the idea that we further discuss the possibility of honorariums for all of our citizen reps who face barriers to attend meetings. So at this point, I would make, this is where I get confused, because does it have to happen within the terms of reference of each committee, or are we able to create a policy that maybe Deputy Warden, through you to the CAO, we can have some feedback?
So, is that okay, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Madam
Yeah.
Chair.
So, at the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting this week, we shared with the committee, council's approval of the policy, and the fact that council was really starting to adopt the culture of accessibility by saying, well, hey, if there's a barrier for that committee for certain groups of citizens, chances are that same group of citizens might want to participate on other committees and have a barrier. And so the Accessibility Advisory Committee really had an interest in supporting council and maybe doing some legwork for you around what that could look like, what some of the specific barriers could be that could be covered under the policy. And so what I suggested to the chair of the committee, who happens to be Councillor Hurlbert, was that if council was to direct the committee to do that research and bring back findings, then it would be within your relationship to your community and their mandate.
So my motion would be that,
To have the Accessibility Advisory Committee study barriers to citizen participation and make recommendations to councilors.
so moved.
Okay, motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Any discussion on the motion on the floor? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item number 9, new business. 9.1, Planning Advisory Committee Policy P-886-22. What is the wishes of council? Deputy Warden?
I'll move that we advance the Planning Advisory Committee Policy P-886-22 to the regularly scheduled council meeting for approval.
Motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Motion on the floor, seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton. Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? Councillor Patty Durkee.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions. One, is this a new policy, and did we not have a PAC policy before?
No.
We didn't?
No.
Okay. So I'm just wondering if we might go through this a little bit that we have done in the past, because I think this is our first time seeing it. So would that be okay to ask staff to kind of do a quick review?
Sure, I think Darlene and I are going to team up on this one as we developed it together. So if you remember when we brought to you recommendations for your legislative agenda, we indicated to you that you needed this policy because where we wrapped up the District Planning Commission, we were non-compliant with the Municipal Government Act on this issue. So because we no longer have a regional planning body, We are now required to have an individual policy on this ourselves. So this is coming to you as a matter of compliance. And what we've done is we've basically created a policy that puts into writing what we're doing with our PAC. So if you look at membership, for example, it's formalizing the structure that you have now and the governance procedures you have now. It sets out the officers, which mirror what you have now, in terms of choosing the chair and the vice chair and the term of the chair and the vice chair. The primary duties follow Robert's rules. The meetings follow our practice in terms of the function and what it's required to do. It mirrors what we're doing, which is complying with legislation, the activities that the PAC is undertaking. It does give the PAC power to request information reports and presentations through the CAO to staff, which we have done in practice, but it now kind of legitimizes that. Excuse me. It sets out certain responsibilities that honor council's position in terms of honoring decision-making and honoring the role of a spokesperson, those sorts of things. The committee can, with the approval of council, establish one or more area advisory committees. And again, that's MGA compliant. You might not be used to that language. And then also the requirement that the committee perform other duties that council may assign to them.
One thing that I really like about this policy is item 6. It outlines in there the function of the Planning Advisory Committee. It also outlines in there what they can and what they cannot do. They can review and make recommendations on planning matters in general, receive reports and recommendations from the municipal planner, what it can and may do. The PAC may request information, reports, and presentations through the CAO from municipal staff, from contractors, and third parties. So it outlines exactly what our PAC committee does. This is something I think that we should have had long ago, way back when I was chairing the PAC over the past quite a few years. So, Councillor Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to both of you for putting this together. I think it's really important as well, and I'm surprised we actually haven't had this. One of the questions I do have is 6.4.1, refrain from lobbying outside committee meetings that might have the effect of limiting free and open discussion. And could we have that explained a little bit more? In other words, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in other words, any discussion to be had about a specific planning advisory committee item is only held during the committee meetings and should not be discussed outside of those committee meetings? Am I correct on that one, or?
I'm not sure to what extent. So you'll notice the word lobbying is in quotations. So that comes from the advice we received from our legal counsel around the requirement for the PAC members to refrain from taking a position on a matter before the PAC until such time as everything has been presented, which includes up to, public hearings and all those sorts of things. And so the risk to the municipality and to other stakeholders is that if there's lobbying happening outside of the framework of the function of the PAC, somebody could bring a claim and it could open the municipality up to a challenge in terms of decisions made by the PAC to make certain recommendations to council, and then following along possible decisions by council. So that's why that's in there, because there is a requirement to not take a position until you've heard all the information.
Thank you very much for the explanation. I think it was probably needed for all of us to clarify.
So is there any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Question being called on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Moving on, item number 9.2, Public Participation Program Policy, P-102-21.
So, Mr. Chair, Darlene and I received some correspondence from the planner and the development officer with respect to the first version of this policy that you passed, I think, just last year, around having public participation meetings at the PAC level when there are files before the PAC that qualify for this process. And because they're the main users of the policy, they identified some areas where it was clumsy. And if you look in the Municipal Government Act, in the section that requires us, 204 and 205, to have this policy, it refers to planning documents. The overarching planning document that sets the vision for the municipality and where major policy decisions are made by council is in the municipal planning strategy. And in the first version of this policy, we included our MPS, our LUB, and our subdivision bylaw. And what we found was we were opening up files for a public consultation process where there was no major change in the policy position of council on a planning issue. And so it confused the public. Items went before the public that were really, if you look at the MPS and the LUB and the subdivision bylaw, they were designed to happen with oversight, but they were designed to happen, they were planned to happen. A perfect example is this property on Highway 1 in Hebron that was commercial and is now being applied to be rezoned back to residential. It was in the municipal planning strategy, it was the strategy and the policies were designed to allow that to revert back to residential. But under the current framework, we have to have a public participation meeting on that when it's clear in the policy statements from council that your intent was for that to revert back to a residential property when and if somebody wanted that to happen. So the recommendation is that we really have these PPMs around any amendments to your municipal planning strategy, which is where your policy decisions are being made, which is where you really want to hear back from your residents. So that is the major change there. There is, we were hosting the meetings, the meetings were being hosted and chaired by the PAC themselves. And the feedback we heard was that it had, for residents who were wanting to provide feedback, it felt like a PAC meeting. And really what we're trying to do is to hear back from people their thoughts and opinions on a particular file. And so the amendment indicates that the PPMs would be delivered by staff as opposed to the PAC, but as directed by the PAC, just to align more with that level of engagement, because it's not a public hearing, which would normally be hosted by the governing body. So those are the two main adjustments. Did I miss anything salient, Darlene? No. Okay.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make a motion that we move public participation program policy, PPPPP-102-21, to regular council for approval.
Motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushing. Any discussion on that motion? Councillor Durkee, could you turn off your mic? Or
Sorry.
unless you wish to, you still have the floor. Councillor Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarity, we, in 3.2, it says, notice of any public participation meeting shall be published in the newspaper circulating in the municipality of the District of Yarmouth, as well on our website and any other social media at least 5 days prior to the meeting. And we know, or I guess I feel that, you know, newspaper reading is at a minimum, and I'm just wondering if there's another source, and maybe this is a larger conversation, you know, for future on how we advertise things like this. You know, newspaper, great, social media, good, but are we really capturing everyone that we need to notify of that? I guess that would be a comment. And the other thing, 2.2, there's just a bracket missing after MPS. Thank you.
Theo?
Yep, so right now, the Municipal Government Act still does require notices to be in a newspaper. Now, newspaper is not defined, so we often use the Clare I'm giving free promotion, but we often use the Claire Shopper as opposed to another periodical for the very reason Councillor Hurlbert explained, is that subscription-based periodicals are winding down, in print form, are winding down, but we still are required to publish in a print form of a circular, so we have to do that. That has to be in there for now. And we could put PSAs on the radio. We could do that as well. We could include that. That would be another form of information sharing for sure.
Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the CAO, or Darlene. This public participation meetings, you know, they were part of the PAC process, but they're not part of the council. That's public hearings, so no matter what, we would still have the public hearing.
Oh, yes.
For all these the same issues that, okay. Okay, thank you.
Any more discussion? Entertain the question on the motion. Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 9.3, Summary Offense Ticket Enforcement Policy S-8106-22.
So I'll start. Lean on Darlene as usual. As council and staff have been working together to try and streamline services and move enforcement files forward in a more timely fashion, one of the tools available in the toolbox is to appoint our bylaw enforcement officers as special constables. Using that tool comes with a requirement to create a policy framework. Now, that appointment and those powers are very specific. They apply to specific pieces of bylaws and legislation, and they come with specific powers, with specific responsibilities and accountabilities. And essentially what will happen is Roger and Dwayne will be able to issue summary offense tickets in certain situations to shorten our enforcement timelines on some of our bylaws. So this policy is required in order to do that and have those appointments on our staff. This policy is required. And the policy follows the framework required by the province for that appointment.
Councillor Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we move this to regular council for approval, Summary Offense Ticket Enforcement Policy S-8106-22.
Motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton. Any discussion on that? Councillor Patty Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question I actually have is that if we have a special constable and they go out and they see, for example, a piece of property that is unsightly, can they then issue a ticket? Or is that something that's a lot more detailed? Because we do have a lot of properties that are unsightly, and I know so far it's always been someone has to complain before anything is moved forward with that. So, and that's why I'm wondering if this would change that, and give the ability of our staff to do that.
So while our officers do enforce the dangerous and unsightly bylaw, we have not included that in the summary offense ticket piece. There are significant legal implications to enforcing cleanups and things like that. So it's better if it comes through council, because often an order to remedy comes with significant costs, which could trigger tax sale and all those sorts of things. So it doesn't lend itself well to this process, although I'm not saying it can't happen if that's what council wants. It's not an ideal application.
Thank you for the explanation.
I do have a question, but I'm not sure how I'm going to ask it. It's in regards to summary tickets, say, for example, are anything in our MPS and LUB, land use bylaws, say, for example, riparian buffers.
So I guess maybe I will just point council to page 1. So the only legislation covered by this policy are the 12 items that are listed on page 1. Those are the only pieces that are specifically covered by this policy.
So 2.1, the Nova Scotia Municipal Government Act, 2.2, the Nova Scotia Fire Safety Act, building codes, building bylaws, dog bylaws, mini mobile park bylaw, noise bylaws, sewer bylaws, waste collection and disposal bylaws, South Ohio wastewater management bylaw, streets and sidewalks bylaw, and the transient vendor bylaw. Those are the 12. Okay, just wanted to be clear on that. Councillor Nick Hilton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And although I've received my fair share of motor vehicle offense tickets, I have a number of these are new for me. So, like, what does a summary offense ticket in the dog bylaw look like? Is that something that we've created, or is that?
So in some of our bylaws, we have definitions for what an offense is and what the, consequences for making that offense could be. And so instead of going to the courts and getting a ruling on that $200 fine, it enables the bylaw enforcement officer to levy the fine. And the dog bylaw is a great example of that. Rather than go to court, let's just issue a summary offense ticket if somebody won't comply.
And they'll stand up in court? Like,
It depends. But one can try.
good, I think it's great.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, what about the reverse onus bylaw for littering? Does that fit in this category as well?
So I think I would have to check, Councillor Hilton. I think our bylaw enforcement officer for solid waste is also a special constable. And so I think that they would be required to have the summary offense ticket piece as well. And we have, it's here, as you see that, solid waste collection and disposal. It's in this list. So we can issue summary offense tickets. And, you know, if one of the three who have the right to do this, so our own two and the one from Waste Check, if they were to issue a ticket because they saw somebody littering and it got challenged in court, then we would see what the burden of proof would be according to that judge.
Perfect. I think it's wonderful. Although issuing tickets is not something that I would like to do, I think enforcement of bylaws is one of the only ways that people will recognize them and follow them. So, exciting stuff.
Councillor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Madam CAO. 2.1 does say dangerous or unsightly premises. So how do you draw the line as to what is minor and what is major?
I don't have the answer to that yet because this is new for us.
Okay.
So we will figure it out.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is there any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Question being called on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. All right, next thing on the agenda is in camera. I need a motion to go into camera. Moved by Councillor Nick Hilton, seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushion to go in camera. All
Thanks,
those in favor
Darlene.
signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.